We interrupt our program to bring you this important message.
Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. Thank you for tuning in. This is the Preternatural Truth Podcast. I'm your host, Lee Arne, and welcome. Today we have a very special guest, Mark, who has a terrifying encounter to share. It's kind of a BIGFOOT DOGMAN Jinn encounter, and you'll hear more about that shortly. So Mark is a person who lives in Texas. However, this experience happened in Louisiana. So I look forward to sharing this with you. And I just want you to be aware that this is a demonic encounter. So perhaps pray about it before you listen. But the reason we are sharing this with the viewers is because you need to be careful what you invite and what you wish for. More on that through Mark and his story. So without further ado, here's Mark. Hi Mark, how are you? And thank you for joining us on the show.
Thank you for having me here.
I've been trying to get you here for some time, and we have tried in the past and we had a few difficulties, but I'm absolutely glad that you're here tonight to share your story.
Thank you.
So Mark, this happened 40 years ago.
Right. Yeah, it happened a long time ago.
Okay.
When I was just a kid.
Right. How old were you at the time, roughly?
Well, it all started out with a UFO encounter. I was only about 16 years old. And I was talking with some friends outside their house. And there were four of us. Mm-hmm. And we were standing out on the driveway, and it was about 10 p.m. at night. And one of the guys looked up in the sky and he said, "Oh, I think I saw that star move." And I said, And I thought to myself about it, and I remember hearing people say that these aliens are telepathic. So what I did is I just started concentrating really, really hard on this star, and I started asking it to move, to show itself, because the other guy, he said he saw it move, and then it stopped. It wasn't moving. So this went on, and I was just concentrating for probably 20 minutes, and then it finally started to move. And it started out just moving a little bit, and then it started moving a lot more. Mm-hmm. And then it just started jumping all around the sky, like zooming back and forth.
Wow.
Going, I don't know how fast, 20,000 miles an hour. And it would zoom straight up in the air and then go so high it would just disappear. And then a couple minutes later, it comes zooming back down. It would go to the left and make 90-degree turns and 180-degree turns. And sometimes it would just go so fast it would just disappear and then reappear in different parts of the sky. And this went on for like about 20 minutes. And we were like the only ones that were seeing it. So I said to myself, okay, is this really telepathic? Is this thing, listening to me? So let me do an experiment. So I said to it in my mind, I said, come down and meet us. So sure enough, this thing started to come down, and it got lower, and it started coming down slowly, and it got lower and lower and lower. And it was coming down about the level around where the backyard was of this house. And I didn't know, where it was going to land or anything, because there was fences and trees back there. But it was just coming down very slowly. And when it got about 500 feet above the ground, it one of my friends, he went inside the house and he told his parents.
Yeah.
And then the mom came outside and she just started screaming as loud as she could. And then the grandmother came outside and she started screaming and acting like she was going to have a heart attack. And then the father, and these three guys were just screaming as loud as they could. And it went on for about 2 minutes. And now, about this time, the UFO is probably about 300 feet above the ground.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't care if these people were screaming or not. It was still coming down.
Can I
And
ask a question, Mark?
sure.
When you say these people were screaming, was it against what was happening? Were they in fear?
Yeah,
or
they were in fear. Yeah.
Yeah.
They were in fear.
Mm.
Right. And they were just screaming. And so I told it in my mind, I said, well, you're causing a big ruckus down here, so you just need to go back up. And sure enough, that's what it did. It just
Wow.
shot back up in about a second and a half. It reached the stars and it just disappeared. It went up so high. And
Yeah.
yeah. And so about 4 days later, I was going hunting. I used to hunt all the time. And I lived in an apartment complex, and it was right next to the woods. The woods were only about 6 feet away from the parking lot. And they were nice woods. Some of the woods were real thick, and other parts of the woods had beautiful oak trees in it, large oak trees. And so I used to love to go out there.
Yeah.
But the cow pasture was had to climb over a barbed wire fence. But I had shot a rabbit there a couple weeks before, and so I got my bow with some razor blade arrows, and I headed out, and I walked along the fence line of this cow pasture that was right at the edge of the woods.
Mm-hmm.
And I walked down to the end of the fence line to where it turned to the right. There was a corner there. So then I turned to the right and I went down, and then I went down a couple hundred feet, and then I came back towards the corner again. And when I got about, I don't know, 30 feet or so from the corner of that fence, I start seeing that it looked like something was in the bushes in the ditch, and they were pushing the bushes back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
There was something big, and it was just moving the little trees and everything back and forth that was in that ditch, and it was walking straight towards me, practically. And so when I got about 25 feet or so from the fence line, from the corner of the fence, I started screaming at it. I said, "Hey, who are you? What is your name?" I thought it was a person.
Yeah.
And it didn't say anything. So it made me kind of angry because I felt like those woods belonged to me. I used to go out there every day, and I never saw anyone out there hardly.
Yeah.
So I was getting ready to take off running, and I actually started to run, and I caught myself, and I was going to go run and jump over the fence and run right up to it,
Mm-hmm.
to see who it was. But something stopped me, because I remember actually about a month or so before, I saw a man out there with he was a large man with a long black beard, and he had a large revolver on his hip. And I said to myself, well, that's kind of weird. We're in the city limits here, we're not allowed to carry guns, in the city
Right.
limits like that.
Yeah.
So I said, maybe it could be that guy or something, so I better not go run over there. And I stopped myself, and I just walked towards the corner of the fence and screamed at it 3 or 4 more times. "Hey, who are you? What is your name? What are you doing here?" But no answer. So then I took a left turn and started heading back towards the apartments, and I was walking about 6 or 7 feet from the fence line, and then this thing started following me, sort of like walking right on the side of me.
Mm-hmm.
And it was crashing through the bushes, and I could see the bushes moving to the back and forth and hear all the ruckus. And then when I would stop walking, it would stop. And then I'd start walking again, and it would start again. And
So
I
it's
stopped.
like mimicking your
Like
walk.
mimicking my movement. And but I couldn't understand how it was doing it because I couldn't see anything. All I could see was the bushes. And I'm thinking, well, if I can't see it, it can't see me. So how is it doing this? And then I took off running real fast and I came to a real fast stop. And then it took a couple steps after I did. And I said, oh, I got you,
Yeah.
And actually kind of, maybe, I don't know if I might have thought it was a little bit funny, but I felt like, hey, I got him to take a couple of more steps. But
Yeah.
about that point, I started to remember that I had shot a bird in those bushes that were over there on the right side in those woods. And those bushes were unlike any of the other bushes in the woods. They were like sharp, spiny, real tight type of a brush with like spines. And I couldn't, the bird was only 8 feet away from me. I couldn't go under the bushes or over the top of the bushes. And I couldn't get to my bird. I could never retrieve that bird.
So in your mind, you're thinking, if I can't get to that bird because the bush is so thick, then how is this thing walking through so quickly? Yeah.
So I'm thinking it's a person, right?
Right.
So, and I'm saying, well, there's no way this could be a human being because I couldn't even get through there. And this thing is not just going through it, it is crashing through it like it's nothing. It's running through these bushes. And these bushes were about 5 feet high, so there's no human being that could be just walking over the top of them. And so at this point, I start to get a little afraid and I start to really take off running, And at the same time, I'm looking to my right side to see if I can see what this thing is, or or who this person is, or whatever. And finally, I caught a glimpse of a dark figured creature about 9 feet tall, and it had one hand, its left hand and arm was stretched out in front of it down towards its waist, and the other hand was up towards its face. And it was kind of like doing like a martial arts type of a block that I actually would use sometimes when I would run through the woods. And of course, at that point, I just took off even faster, and I jumped over the barbed wire fence and ran right into my apartment. But there was a large tree right at the edge of the wood line, right at the end before I jumped over the fence. And when it got to that tree, it sounded like it was just snapping these 6 or 8 inch diameter limbs right off of the tree. So, some time went by, and, my brother asked me, he says, well, Mark, why are you not going out hunting anymore? And I just didn't want to say anything to anybody,
Yeah.
And, but when we were getting ready to move, it was about 6 months later or so, I said, I got to go to that tree and look for those limbs. And I went to the tree, and there was not a single limb on the ground, and I know that no one else goes in there. No one came and removed any limbs. And I looked in the tree, there was no broken limbs from the tree.
So looking back now, do you think that was just a sound effect that whatever that was could make to make you think that was happening?
Yes, absolutely. It had to be some type of sound effect or a delusion, that I had experienced. It just seemed so real,
Yeah, I've heard that myself too, snapping and crashing of a tree, but there's no tree to be found. So I know that happens. Yeah.
Yep. That's true.
Yeah.
So anyway, I know that this story needs to be told, because now I'm going to tell you about the tree stand encounter. And it all kind of ties into my theory, on what these things are. So anyway, a couple years later, my dad invites me out to go deer hunting with him. to West Bay, Louisiana. It's a wildlife management. It's a pretty nice size amount of woods, that they do public hunting on.
Yeah.
And so he invited me to go to the first day of deer season hunting with him. So I was a carpenter's helper at the time. And I had built a tree stand out of 2x4s, but I cut them in half, made them into 2x2s. And it looked like a ladder. And then at the top, it had like a little piece of plywood and just big enough for me to sit on. And I put a piece of carpet on and cut like a V in the back of it so it would go up against a tree, kind of.
Yeah.
And so we scouted, the day before or 2 days before we got there, and we found our places to hunt. And then the next day we went out and we put our tree stands up. And so opening day, I was going out to my tree stand, and it was a pretty nice walk out there, a couple hours or so to get to the location. And, I was going through the woods, and then I had to go through an open field. And the open field was pretty long, I guess, maybe 1,000 feet long. And the grass was pretty tall. And I was pretty much like in the middle of the field. And I started to get a feeling like something was watching me. I got an eerie feeling. And it came to me. I said, "What is that?" And I said, "That's that same feeling that I got from the UFO, And I said to myself, this must be that UFO, because when I had the UFO encounter and I told it to go back up, I said, well, maybe we talk again sometimes, or maybe we can meet each other again sometimes. But, a couple years had happened since that time, and I wasn't really, thinking about anything like that, but it was the feeling that I got. So that's what I thought it was. So I just said in my mind, I said, you can come and meet me in my tree stand if you want to.
Ooh.
And yeah. So I loaded my gun right there. And because I was feeling kind of, like afraid a little bit, but not much, but I could feel a little bit of evil. And I could even feel it coming from my right rear. Like I could almost sense where this thing was located. It was weird. So I went ahead, walked into the next set of woods where my tree stand was set up, very close to the next set of woods. And they had some large oak trees there. And I went and got in my tree stand, and I was sitting there. Mm-hmm. It was about 15 minutes, I guess, had gone by. And it was extremely cold. And I was just sitting there in my tree stand, and I heard someone coming walking up to my right rear, pretty much where I had walked in. Yeah. And as soon as they got underneath the trees, I could hear crunch, crunch, because the leaves on the ground were crunchy. Mm. And I could hear them crunching, and they were walking pretty fast. So, so it was easy to tell that it was something bipedal.
And it was heavy on the foot?
Yes, yes, and it was heavy on the foot. But I also noticed that it's something kind of strange, that it seemed like it was walking in the footsteps were like 4 or 5 feet apart. And I said, now that's weird, but I didn't think too much about it. And so when it got about right to my right side, and it was about, I don't know, maybe 35 feet away or 40 feet away, and it was straight off to my right, I was just getting ready to scream at it and tell it, hey, you can't hunt here. You need to go somewhere else to hunt. Because, I thought it was a person.
Yeah.
And so right when I was getting ready to scream at it, it stopped moving. It stopped walking. Mm. But then I also noticed, I said, hey, wait a minute. There's no flashlight here. And I, waved my hand in front of my face, and I couldn't see my fingers. And it was dark.
Yeah.
It was, I don't know. It was pretty early in the morning still, So About 5 minutes went by and I didn't hear anything. And then I heard one step, crunch, and then about 2 minutes went by and then another step, crunch. And then about 15 seconds went by and another step.
So it's coming more forward.
Well, it was still, at this point, it was still, still going. It was going away from me and it was going it was to my right side and it was going straight ahead.
Right.
So, and then I heard a crash on a tree, kind of like it jumped or something. Like it was like about 10 feet away from the last step or 8 feet away. And I could hear a thud on the tree.
Mm.
And then another minute went by and then I heard another step, and then another 5 seconds went by and then kaboosh, like it stepped on there was some dead trees over there. It's like it stepped on one of these dead trees and it crunched through it. And I could even feel like the vibration of the ground, vibrate up through my tree stand and everything. And then it started to circle around and start to come towards me. And all the time it wasn't taking regular steps. There were time intervaled in different time periods, like a 5 second and then another step and 10 seconds and another step. And then it would wait a minute before it would take another step.
Yeah.
So I felt like it was stalking me. And so now at this point, it's coming straight towards me and it's getting pretty close. So I'm thinking to myself, okay, now I need to do something, I need to maybe shoot it, but I'm kind of confused. I don't know what to do because my dad said, well, some hogs could come through there in the morning and you just need to realize that you're up in a tree stand. They can't smell you. They can't hear you there, if you stay still, and they're just going to keep on going and you won't mess up your hunt. So I, just tried to stay brave. Okay. Yeah. But then it got closer and closer, and then I started thinking, okay, I need to probably shoot this thing, or at least put my flashlight on it with my gun ready to go to shoot in case. So when I reached in my pocket to grab the flashlight, I started hearing bipedal footsteps directly behind me. And they're coming up pretty quick. And then I hear rustling in the trees, like it's climbing the tree behind me, but still about 30 feet or so behind me, or 25 feet, something like that. And it's climbing up the tree. I can hear it climbing up the tree. And now the one in front of me, it just keeps getting closer and closer. And now I start hearing the one behind me. It's going from tree to tree. Whoa. Like I can hear the rustling in the tree limbs, like it's going from tree to tree directly behind me. And now the one in front of me, I feel it shakes my tree stand. And
can I just ask you, at that moment, what were you feeling? Were you just absolutely petrified?
Yeah, because I was now at this time, I realized that I can't defend myself. I can't shoot. And because I'm surrounded and there's no way for me to turn around and defend myself with my rifle, because the tree was fairly large and my tree stand was very small. And there was just no way for me to turn around and shoot behind me. I was completely defenseless.
Yeah.
Is the way I felt.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess the tree stand being so tiny is what added to all of that. So now I feel this thing jump onto my tree, the one that's coming from behind me. And I hear a bunch of ruckus and a bunch of tree limbs crashing and breaking as this thing is coming straight down my tree. And the one on the bottom, actually felt it kind of touch my boot. And then I start hearing it climb up the tree in front of me. There was a couple little trees in front of me, about 6 feet away.
Oh.
And so I hear it, it kind of goes up the tree, and the one on top of me comes down pretty close, you know. And then all of a sudden, all the noise and the movements stop. And I'm just sitting there. And I don't know exactly how long went by, maybe 2 minutes, maybe 5 minutes. And I didn't hear anything. And then I feel a tap on.
Take your time, Mark. It's okay. It's okay.
Yeah. I'm sorry. Well,
No,
anyway.
don't be sorry. Just take a breath. It's all right.
Thank you. Anyway, I hear a tap. I feel a tap on my head, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And kind of like a human, you know, like when you tap your child on your head, or you pat them on the head, or your dog.
Yeah.
And it kind of felt like that. And so about, I guess, a minute or two went by, and then there was another tap on my head, but this time it was twice as hard as the first one. And then I guess another 15 seconds went by, and then another tap. This one was 3 times as hard.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of got the impression that, well, this thing was right there in my face, and it was saying, it was tapping me on my head to say, like, here I am.
Right.
You know? So at this point, I am just completely petrified. I start to shake. My left side of my face started to quiver, and my left knee started to shake, you know?
Yes.
And something inside of me kept telling me, don't show fear or you're going to die. Don't show fear. And it's almost like I was receiving a message, you know, don't show fear. And so I kept telling myself that. I kept telling myself, don't show fear, don't show fear. And I was telling myself, don't let your leg shake like that,
Okay.
you know, and don't let your face quiver. So at this point, you know, I had pretty much forgotten about inviting this thing to come visit me in my tree stand, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but anyway, then I start to remember, I said, well, maybe this was the thing that came to visit me, that maybe this was the ET, the alien, you know. So I said, well, maybe I need to ask it a question. I need to try to communicate with it telepathically, you know. And so I did. I asked it in my mind. I just said, what is your purpose here on this earth? And it said, you wouldn't want to know. And so then I asked it, I felt like I needed to show it that I was brave. I didn't really want to see it, but I asked it, I said, can I see you? And it said, you wouldn't like what you would see. But then it projected an image into my mind of like a werewolf or a dogman, you know. Right. And it was like a type 3 variant, really mean looking. And I said to myself, oh, no, this is not real. This is not, these things don't exist. This can't be. Mm-hmm. But so then another image came into my mind, and it was like a regular Bigfoot, you know. And I said, well, darn, I mean, they don't have Bigfoots around here. I mean, this was the time when, you know, I had a little TV set with rabbit ears on it with about 4, 5, 6 stations on it, you know. I mean, we didn't hardly know anything about a Bigfoot, right?
Yeah.
And so then another image came into my mind of a Bigfoot, but with like a baboon snout nose. And so I'm sitting there in the tree, and then this thing exhales into my face, but really strong exhale that lasted, I don't know, maybe 45 seconds. And it actually blew some of its saliva or snot or whatever onto my cheek up by my eye on my left
Wow.
side of my face. And of course, I was too afraid to, reach up and clean it off, I was still just sitting there trying to be still. And so I really thought I was going to die. I mean, I was sitting there waiting for this thing to kill me. And I just, I started to pray, to God. I said, God, please forgive me for all my sins and take me straight to heaven, after I die. And so, and then a couple minutes went by, and I realized that I was still alive. And it was actually, I was kind of surprised, because I really thought I was would have been dead by then.
Yeah.
But I wasn't. So so then I started asking, God to protect me, and also told it telepathically. I said, why are you doing this to me? Why are you scaring me like this if I invited you over here? And it didn't say anything, but I felt and I heard the one that was above me on my tree jump over to the tree in front of me. And then I heard both of them starting to move away and move off to my left, going from tree to tree. And then I heard them jump down on the ground and walk away bipedally,
Wow.
And so,
do you think, Mark, that happened? Do you think the reason they left was because you started to pray?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, I believe that.
Yeah. At the time, I didn't know what was going on. That it all happened and everything. I didn't know. But, now that I've really had a chance to reflect on everything, then yeah, definitely. At that, I do believe that it was the prayer that saved me.
Yeah.
But so I was feeling like I was going to throw up. I was really traumatized right then, and through this whole ordeal, and this thing started to leave, and I was trying to be brave, and I said, look, I mean, I'm still thinking, alien, and so I said to it, in my mind, I said, well, I was starting to feel a lot braver because they were leaving. I felt a big relief.
Oh, I bet.
So I said to it, I said, are you a demon? And immediately it said, no, I'm an empty vessel. But I didn't have really any idea what that meant, So, but I could feel a demonic presence. I mean, I could feel such hatred, like hatred that I had never even imagined possible coming from anything. Was the feeling I got from it.
That's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just an incredible amount of hatred. Like, it didn't just hate me, it hated all human beings equally, it just hated everyone. And so I asked it, who is controlling you? And it gave me a name. It gave me a name that I had never heard of before. And it kind of sounded like it was from the Bible, but from the Old Testament, Yeah. And I knew that I was never going to be able to remember this name. And so I asked it, I said, well, give me a name that I can remember. and it didn't want to answer me. And I kept asking it over and over. And then it said, Jen. So I said, okay, I know a lady named Jen. I can remember that. But I didn't have any idea, what that meant.
Right.
At the time. And so I told it that I was going to pray for it. And, because I could feel that demonic presence in it. And so then I asked it, I said, well, where are you going? And because I just didn't know what to ask it, and it showed me an image in my mind of a cliff that was pointed at the front, and it was about 75 feet high or 100 feet above the water, and there was a lot of big rocks, and it looked like an ocean to the right side and a water in the front of it, and like a calmer water to the left, like a bay to the left. And I saw these guys in a rowboat, in a wood rowboat, carrying 2 wood boxes, and they were wearing robes like you would wear like from like monks, like from the 1300s or something like that.
Right.
Yeah, like from a long time ago. And I still to this day, I don't have a clue why I was shown that image. But so it looked like to me there was a bunch of these creatures walking along this very, very steep cliff that I don't think a human could even traverse. And they were going into this cave, and it had a small entrance at the very front. And at this point, I am able to see through this creature's eyes. It looks like I'm able to see through its eyes, and we're walking into the cave. And then this little creature comes up along the side, and it's only about 4 foot tall, and it's wearing a green robe with a hoodie. You can't see its face or anything. All you can see is the clothing and some horns sticking out of the top of the robe. And the horns come down around the forehead, and they come in, I guess, around the cheek area, and then the point comes out around the chin area. And it was only like 4 feet tall. And so I assumed that this was the jinn that was controlling it. So anyway, that was pretty much the end of that encounter. And I
Wow.
a couple hours later or so, I shot a deer, and my dad, we brought it back to camp and everything. And later, he comes into the little camper that we were staying in, and he has a little figurine with him that was like a weaving, and it was woven out of like a twig, and it was oval shaped, had another twig going through the very center of it. And it was very well made, had to have a lot of talent. Someone had to have a lot of talent to make it. So he asked me, he said, Mark, did you make this? And I said, no, I didn't make it. And he kept asking me over and over if I made it. And something told me that, I don't know why, I just had the strange feeling this had to have come from that creature, Yeah. And so I got a hold of it. I could tell my dad was completely fascinated with it, and he was going to take it home. So I got a hold of it, and I started trying to unravel the little twigs, from it, because they were just going in a circle all around the twigs. A small twig was going wrapped around and around.
Yeah.
And it started to snap and break. And then I just took it outside of the trailer, and I just crumpled it up into little pieces and threw it away, because I just felt like it was going to maybe open a doorway or something for my dad, for this creature to come visit my dad if he took it home with him.
I'm glad you did that and got rid of it.
Yeah, right. And so I later will see another person on the internet, that he has also been gifted some of these things, and he actually has one that looks very similar to the one that I had received.
Mm.
But so, my dad, we were talking that night, and my dad wanted me to go back hunting again the next day. And I said, no, I'm already shot my deer. I don't need to go back again. And he said, oh, no, but this is what we came here for. You need to go back out again. And I didn't want to tell him about my encounter, So, but I said, but he forced me to go hunting again. And he was, pretty forceful person. So I told him about the part of this thing coming up and shaking my tree stand, but I didn't tell him anything about the telepathic part or nothing like that.
Right.
And he said, well, it's like riding a horse. You need to get back out there. You need to go hunting again.
Mm.
So reluctantly, I did. And nothing happened that day. Didn't have any experiences, nothing. So the next day, I said to myself, well, look, this thing darn near killed me. It, almost had a heart attack out there, but it didn't really, I didn't get to see its face, in the daytime, so I need to at least be able to see this thing, and so I, remember feeling its presence to my right rear when I was walking out to the stand. So I made a plan that the next day I was going to go out there and I was going to leave my tree stand early and go look for it. So believe it or not,
That's
I know it's
very
hard to
brave of
believe.
you.
It's hard to believe someone could be that stupid or that hard-headed, but that was me. And so I left my tree stand and I went towards my right rear, towards that area, and I had my compass and I walked and walked and walked. And my gosh, probably walked 4 hours or so. And still didn't see anything or feel its presence too much, and then finally I got to this one area and they had a bunch of these little white barked trees, which were unusual for those woods. And they were all growing in a circle, but it was a pretty large circle and they were real close together. And then I could feel the presence of this thing in there, in those trees. And I said, okay, I have arrived to the location, and so I'm getting ready to walk into those trees, and then I get another telepathic message, and it says, if you come over here, you're going to die.
Wow.
So, yeah. So, I mean, that I got kind of afraid, and then I said, okay, I'm not going to go, to myself, I'm not going into the trees now. But I tried to, even after that. I mean, I tried, I wanted to go there. I said, man, I walked 4 hours, to get here. I mean, I have to go.
Yeah.
And, but, all of this negativity started to come into my mind. Like I started getting 1,000 thoughts just racing through my mind all at one time. And I started to think that I was.
Some of those thoughts a little bit in detail?
Not really. It's just that you would get one thought and then another thought and then another thought.
Okay, and it was all negative.
And I start feeling sick to my stomach, and
right.
and I start feeling nervous, and I started getting the thought that I was lost in the woods, and I even said to myself, "Oh darn, I'm lost in the woods, and now I need to sleep here tonight." It was starting to get kind of dark. And I said, oh gosh, I'm lost in the woods. I need to sleep here tonight, And then I looked at my compass and I said, I must be following my compass incorrectly. I need to go this other direction. I need to stop going in the direction that I think my compass is telling me to go. I need to go change and go somewhere else, because I should have arrived to the camp by now. I've been, too long in the woods. So
yeah.
So I started walking to the left, following the compass in a different direction. And I said, wait a minute, what are you doing? And I said, and I looked over there at those trees and I said, a couple of days before when I had that encounter, I said, maybe and I remember the horns of this creature. and the demonic feeling. And I said, what if this was a demonic encounter that I had? Maybe I'm dealing with a demon or something. So I said to myself, well, if that's the case, then I need to pray.
Mark, I just want to interrupt you.
Sure.
When you said you had that feeling of confusion and being lost in the woods, it brings to mind the encounters that David Paulides researches, the missing 411. And very often people have walked that path, over and over again, but for some strange reason, they get lost.
Exactly.
And they have a sense of confusion and being off the track, and something happens. And, then these people go missing. Well, there's a few people who have actually come out of that and have it described exactly what you're talking about. So, is this a part of the missing 411 that you've experienced, or?
Yes, absolutely.
Who knows?
I absolutely believe it is. I do believe that this is the same thing that is causing those people in the woods to go missing in these 411 cases, because it was trying to convince me to not obey my compass and to go somewhere else. And it was trying to convince me to sleep right there next to this thing that was trying to kill me. And it almost had me convinced. So, yeah, I definitely believe that, and I've heard other missing 411 cases, where this one guy just goes running off into the woods for no reason, and they never see him again. And he was with a film crew.
That's right. Yes.
Yeah, and he just went running off like something got into his brain, and he they knew him for 20 years, and he would never do anything like that. And something was just controlling his mind, So, so I said, okay, I need to pray. And I started trying to pray, and I couldn't get out the words. And I got a telepathic message coming in again, and it said, that's not going to help you. And I started trying to say Jesus's name, and it said, Jesus doesn't exist. And I said to myself, okay, now I know what I'm dealing with now. I know I'm dealing with a demonic entity now, because there's no way it would say Jesus wouldn't exist if he wasn't demonic.
Right.
So.
And Satan is a liar. So. Yeah. He comes to kill, steal, and destroy. And you can't trust anything that the demons tell you. Right.
So I just, leaned up against a tree, and I was just trying to pray, and it took me probably 2 minutes before I could get a word out. And it took all of the willpower that I had.
Just take your time, Mark. It's all right.
Yeah. Yeah, just, telling about this is hard because it puts me right back, into it.
It's reliving that trauma.
Yeah.
And we really appreciate you sharing this, because too many people go out thinking that the Bigfoot's a good thing, and they go out looking and they study the glyphs that they leave, and they're offering food and all sorts to the Bigfoot. And we're trying to get through to these people. Don't do that, because this is a deception, and it's a demonic deception. Right. And
people don't realize, how difficult it is, when you encounter something like this. I really feel like that most people might have died out there that afternoon, because they wouldn't have had the willpower that I had, because it really, really took a lot of willpower just to say a simple prayer. And as soon as I was able to pray just a little bit and say Jesus's name, all the clarity came back to me.
Hallelujah.
It was just amazing. It was just, I became calm again. All the nervousness, all the bad feelings went away, all the negative thoughts went away. And I almost, like became joyful. And I just said, and I don't even remember if I screamed out, but I said, "What are you doing here? You're going to sleep next to this thing? You must be crazy." And I just started crashing through the briar bushes and heading in the direction of the compass, that wanted me to go, because I was way up in the thicket. It was so difficult to walk that you couldn't walk, very far. You had to keep doing all this zigzagging, so it took a long time to just cover a short amount of distance. But I just started crashing through the briars and just going. And and the road wasn't really that far away from where I was.
Yeah.
And another hunter picked me up in his truck. At that point, it was kind of dark. And hunter picked me up and brought me back to the camp. And that was about it, And I just see so many people wanting to find these things out there in the woods.
Yeah.
That it, I guess what really did it, I was listening to one of these podcasts, and they had some little old ladies, and they were out there in the woods at 2:00 in the morning with flashlights looking around for Bigfoot. And I thought, my gosh, these people they just don't really have a clue. They don't have an idea what they're looking for.
That's it.
And I just, I just felt like somebody needs to tell them. But I know that most people, they don't believe this type of thing that I'm saying, They want to believe that these things are animals. And there could be an animal type of they could take on a flesh and blood type of form,
I believe that. Yeah.
So, but I do believe that they do have a supernatural ability, even if they are flesh and blood, or if they are just a purely paranormal entity type thing, or Nephilim, like Scott Carpenter talks about the Nephilim, that's a good example of what they could be.
Yeah.
I just know one thing, and that they are, and that is demonic. That I truly do believe, and I think people really need to think about what they're going looking for. And so
Yes.
the reason I talked about the UFO encounter is because after many years of thinking back on what happened to me, and I found out what the meaning of empty vessel is. And the empty vessel, actually just found out not too long ago. An empty vessel could be a flesh and blood animal, or a person that is possessed by a demon, or it could just be an entity,
Right.
So it could just be a demonic entity, something without a soul.
Right.
And then a jinn, I thought it was a woman's name, but later I found out that it is from the Quran. They talk about these demonic entities in the Quran,
Yeah.
that they call the jinn.
And that's spelled DJINN.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
whoa, what a story. Wow.
and that helped me, it took many, many, many years for me to find out the meaning of these two words. And that helped to just drive it all home, that this was real. This,
Yeah.
really happened. And so it's pretty scary, you know, and then you look at all these missing 411 cases too. And
Yes. No,
yeah.
I think you're onto something there. And praise God that you're still here today. Seriously. That could have been your last day.
Right.
And
Could have been.
yeah. And it's brought you closer to God, and it's taken you down a lot of research.
It has.
And
yes, it has. It's brought me closer to God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Praise God. And one of the Facebook group that you share is called, I just wrote it down here, A Christian Perspective to Bigfoot, Dogman, and something else. But I'll put the link in the story underneath.
Right.
And people can check out your group too, because your group's about exposing the deceptions of aliens and UFOs and demons that have these kind of shape-shifting abilities and present themselves in different ways, such as looking like an alien or a Bigfoot or a dogman.
Right.
And they're nothing more than demonic entities. And it was your desire to teach people the truth about this through having this encounter. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yes, from my encounters, I have come to the conclusion that the aliens and the ghost and the Bigfoot and the Dogman and all of these cryptids, they're all the same. Then the aliens are all demonic entities, you know?
Yeah.
All one and the same. And I know a lot of people have a hard time to believe that, but this is what I believe, you know?
Oh, I do want to ask you, how did you work through all the trauma that caused you?
You know, Lee, I didn't really let it traumatize me too much, to be honest with you. I get emotional when I talk about it sometimes, but it didn't really, I mean, I don't think it really affected me that much, you know. I was young, very young at the time, and I guess that was one of the things that helped me, you know.
Right. Yeah.
Was just being young, I guess. So, yeah. But I mean, you know, it was a very traumatic experience. I'm not going to kid you there. I mean, it was definitely very traumatic.
Absolutely. And Mark, have you ever had a listen to Mark Barton's story on YouTube?
Yes, I have listened to his story.
Yeah, and it's not unlike his, is it? It's very similar in lots of ways.
It is kind of similar. Yeah.
Yeah.
It is.
Wow. And if anyone's out there having terrible demonic encounters and needs help, you can seek help through the website newtochrist.com.au. Mark, I want to thank you for joining us today. It's been an eye-opening chat that we've had.
Thank you.
And I really hope that people who are looking at Bigfoot as if they're your friend or as if they're here to help humanity, that this isn't really the case. And I hope that your story has enlightened them. And thank you so much for being a guest on the show.
You're very welcome, Lee. Thank you for having me on the show.
You're welcome, Mark. God bless you.
All right. God bless you too.